Everybody does their top 10 coaching lists, but we're better than everybody else, right? And we're humble too. So I think it's easy to rank a top 10 list, right? Everybody puts Kirby, everybody has Sark, everybody has Ryan Day. That's easy. We're going to do, and this is Cole's brainchild here, so this is not me, so give Cole all the credit. Coaches who will be or who could be top 10 coaches like 3 years from now. I think it's really easy to make a top 10 list right now. It's a combination of wins and, historical Dabo's in there because it's top 10 or whatever, championships. Who are we projecting to be a little bit better? Cole's rules here, current college football coach who is ranked outside the top 10 that everybody would kind of consensus say is not in there, that will have their name in that pecking order by this time in 2028. No coach who has ever been considered that and then maybe fell out. Lincoln Riley, Dan Mullen, Mike Norvell, Mike Gundy. Also has to be a current Power 4 coach at their current program. Like you can't say like, oh, this coach goes here, goes to Alabama because what's his name gets fired and then turns them into a top program. Like has to be at their current job. They've turned their program into a staple. Cole, you came up with this, so we'll let you start.
Yeah, the reason I did that was because of John Summerall would have been the number one pick for me, but I just don't think that he's going to be at Tulane in 3 years, so I didn't want to go ahead and rumor, oh, he's going to North Carolina, or he's going to NC State, and I'll turn that program around. Quickly, I want to give the honorable mentions that were on my list. Number 1, Fran Brown at Syracuse. Number 2, Jonathan Smith at Michigan State. Number 3, Eli Drinkowitz. And number 4, Dan Mullen. Because I still think he got a short end of the stick at Florida, and I'm not over that, Scott Strickland. I'm not. I'm still pissed about that. But number 1 for me is Rhett Lashley at SMU. People don't realize that SMU has the resources, the funds, and the fan base willing to spend money now that they're in the Power 4 level. Look at what they did last season as first-timers in the ACC. Not only were they able to go undefeated in the regular season, but they also were able to combatively put together meticulous offensive drives underneath Lashley's offensive direction. They have the quarterback in Kevin Jennings. They're going to be a program that portals in players every single year from major institutions like Alabama and Ohio State, and then they're going to eventually turn the corner and turn into, I would say, day 2, early day 3 selections for the NFL draft. You look at the current status of the ACC. I don't know what to make of Clemson and Florida State for the long term, but also I don't know what to make of their head coaching searches. Eventually, you're going to see, I think, Dabo Swinney say, this isn't for me. He's going to hang up the whistle and he's going to go into broadcasting. Is Mike Norvell around for the long term? What do we make of Brett Pry at Virginia Tech? What about Dave Duran at a place like NC State? There's an opportunity for Rhett Lashley, with what the Ponies have currently infrastructurally, to not only take over the ACC, but become a legitimate force that is a dynamic name that really runs college football. And I think that people don't understand that when you start to build the culture the way that Lashley has, there's an understanding about what type of players you're looking for and who are the type of names that you believe are necessities to be a part of your team. They were able to win the American Conference in their final year. They were able to be competitive in the ACC their first year. They really were only a handful of plays away from winning the ACC over Clemson, and they would have been a guaranteed college football playoff bid regardless of just sneaking their way in as the 11th seed. And this was year 1. I truly believe that when you look at what Lashley's able to do, how he calls offenses, and what he looks for in terms of directional players in the portal and in recruiting, there's an opportunity for him to become a household name in college football. And honestly, I think the next Dabo Swinney in the ACC, where they are the team to beat moving forward down in Dallas.
I spent some time around Rhett in Charlotte for ACC kickoff, and he is one of the most personable, like easy to talk to. He was just grabbing a coffee, and a couple of us were chatting with him before any of the media stuff, before anything like really got kicked off there. And I really like him. Just all the things you mentioned as to why he could be really good. I'm just kind of giving Rhett Lashley, the person, some love. He just seems so down to earth, and I think that he relates really well with guys. I think he should have had more success at Miami, but they were just kind of a dumpster fire when he was there as the OC. I really like him, and I again, for all the reasons you mentioned, I think he's great for this list, but just who he is as a person and just kind of how real he is, I really liked my time around Rhett Lashley. So, Tom, I don't know if you have anything on Rhett or not, but if not, you can go on to yours and then I'll go to mine.
Yep. No, the money's definitely there. The money is absolutely there. SMU is poised to strike.
Tom, go ahead, and then I'll jump in.
I am going to go with Bret Bielema within the Big Ten. And I mentioned this earlier. I just like what he has built at Illinois. The immense challenge for Illinois is going to be cracking that top four. And they were in that argument this past season. Obviously, we talked about Alabama, South Carolina, Ole Miss, all the teams complaining that they should have been in the college football playoff. I wouldn't describe it as complaining, but Bret Bielema was jumping in there and kind of poking some fun at Ole Miss and saying, well, you're 9-3. We're 9-3. We should be in there as well. Very tongue in cheek. And then you go and beat South Carolina in the Cheez-It Bowl and you make Shane Beamer cry. I always love that. I think Bret Bielema is on the right path to building Illinois because it's classic Big Ten football. It fits his brand. It fits his recruiting base. He wants to run the ball extremely well and play good defense. He was spoiled by having this veteran quarterback at Luke Altmaier take a step this past season. I think Altmaier can do the same this upcoming season. I just think Illinois is on the right path. The challenge for them, again, is who's that fourth team in the Big Ten? I expect Michigan to get back to being Michigan. So you're looking at Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, and Michigan, right? Well, Penn State loses Drew Aller and most of its nucleus once 2026 rolls around. There's going to be an opportunity there. It's a big question mark of, all right, is Signetti for real? Is Indiana for real? All that stuff. The opportunity is there for Bret Bielema and company to make Illinois a contender because of the 4 automatic qualifiers for the Big Ten. I think if Illinois stays the course the way that they are, they continue to send talent to the National Football League. They're clearly getting the right people on the field. Bret Bielema and company could find themselves as a top 10 team very, very soon because they're just going to work their way into the playoff, perhaps on a regular basis.
So I'm going to roll over to the Big 12. I gave the Big 12 some love in this type of segment last week too. But again, tying everything back to Florida State, I love Kenny Dillingham. We talked about this last week. I think that the Big 12 is wide open. I think he's also at his dream job. I don't really foresee a situation where he leaves. Now, I don't know. Notre Dame offers him $15 million a year because coaching contracts continue to go insane. I mean, maybe he has a hard choice there, but I do think the Big 12 is wide open. I think that you kind of see Whittingham based on his prior success. Like they're always going to throw a Big 12 coach into the top 10 polls, right? And always going to throw an ACC coach or two in there too. So I think in the Big 12 is as wide open for anybody that's out there. I think that him being bought in, not looking to leave, that being his alma mater, I really think that his energy, the way that he develops relationships and the way that he is just wide open right now, being so young and really being able to build a winner in year 2 there, getting to the playoff. I love Kenny Dillingham. I think that he's got a good offense. I think he's really, really good at developing talent. I, as a Florida State guy, give him like 97% of the credit for developing Jordan Travis, a kid that they wouldn't even let throw the ball when he got onto campus. Jordan Travis, the first time he touched the ball in a game was like a 50-yard rush because they only brought him in to be a gadget. I think that he has a really, really good chance to continue to scout, continue to be very innovative offensively, develop relationships. He brings great energy, and I think that Kenny Dillingham's a guy that I could see in that list.
So real quickly, number one, both of your coaches are in my way too early college football playoff for 2025 because of how much returning production they have. And number two, for Tom, just real quickly, when it comes to Bret Bielema, I honestly think he would already be a top 10 coach in college football if he didn't try to go ahead and change Arkansas. If he was to stay at Wisconsin, I think he would have had the Badgers in the right direction and maybe even multiple college football playoff appearances. But you decided to go ahead and bring up the fact that he made Shane Beamer cry. And how dare you be disrespectful that way because of my number 2 coach is Shane Beamer. So guess what? Beamer ball versus Bielema is going to be a new tradition that I'm excited for. Hopefully we get those games in the playoffs every single year. Here's the thing about Shane Beamer. Number one, he has hit the over of the win total 3 of his first 4 years in South Carolina. He did it his first year with a graduate assistant as his quarterback. Zeb Nolan was going into coaching. He still had 1 more year of eligibility, and they said, we don't have a quarterback. Can you go throw the football around just a little bit? Sure, we'll get to a bowl game. The next season, they break the spirits of Tennessee and Clemson in back-to-back weeks, knocking them out of the college football playoff, and they find themselves ranked inside the top 25 for the first time in, 6 years? 5-6 years? The following season, down year, terrible offensive line. This year, young quarterback and a player that many people thought was maybe a little bit overrated coming into the season, but eventually found his wagon. The most improved player in college football for my money in Lenora Sellers. Stellar defensive line. The reutilization of a guy in a reutilization in Rocket Sanders, finally living up to his expectation that he was supposed to be at Arkansas, and very limited but underwhelming and still growing mature-wise wide receiver play. They get to 9-3, and they're a Nicky Manwari interception, pick six away from being in the college football playoff this year. They have the buy-in from the locker room. And at a place like South Carolina, I don't know if you guys have ever been to Willie B, but I like to use this phrase, cathedral of chaos, which is the way I describe stadiums, the way I describe atmospheres in college football. The ultimate cathedral of chaos in college football, for my money, is Willie B on a Saturday night. You are got to be a psycho to be a part of South Carolina culture. And in my opinion, when I look at what Shane Beamer is, he beats to his own drum. He is the most authentic coach in the SEC. He is willing to weigh his emotions on it, wear his emotions on his sleeve. And he brings in players that want to be in Columbia. They don't want to go to places like Alabama, or they don't want to go to Columbia, Missouri. They don't want to go to Gainesville. They want to be a part of the atmosphere that the Cox are bringing every single season. And I think that means something to a place like South Carolina. You have got to be the most authentic version of yourself if you want to have success. And the reason South Carolina has had success is because of the authenticity that a guy like Shane Beamer provides. I believe that every few years you will see South Carolina compete for a college football playoff berth. I believe every year from here on out, 8 wins should be the standard. I believe that they're going to land premier players in recruiting. They've seen their numbers go up in recruiting and the transfer portal rankings, and they're going for sustainability with culture. When you build a culture the way that you can in a place like South Carolina, I think that is something that is a testament of how you are as a coach. And in my opinion, when I look at all the resources that could be provided Shane Beamer's way, he's only getting started. Like, he probably is a top 25 coach in college football right now. I think 3 years from now, in a playoff appearance, puts him inside the top 10.
Tom, you're up next.
Shout out to TriStar for not understanding the structures of the SEC or the ACC, unless you're being sarcastic there in the chat, but enjoy yourself. Okay. This one's a little bit of a shot in the dark, and I'm biased on this one, but let me explain.
You broke the rules, but I'm going to allow this because this was a really interesting one too.
This is fun. How much longer do we think Lincoln Riley has at USC?
2 years.
If that, right? It's been proven, I think, at this point in his time at Oklahoma and now at USC, is that he doesn't bend to what his personnel offers him. He is trying to get the right personnel to fit his system. And that was an immense challenge for him this past year. Miller Moss was not built to throw the ball 30, 35, 45, 50 times a game, like playing backyard Caleb Williams football at times. Jaden Mayava, a little closer to that. Now, they have lost a lot of players in the transfer portal, especially that wide receiver room. The cupboard is bare, unfortunately. They still have some talent. It's USC. They're going to have some people there. They've done better in defensively. My gut feels like you're going to see Lincoln Riley out in the next year or two. So then it's, okay, what has been the history at USC in terms of hiring coaches after Pete Carroll? You had Lane Kiffin for 3 seasons. Probably a little too early for Lane Kiffin to be the guy. Like, he's really settled in at Ole Miss. I think we can agree on that.
Sure.
Then you have the interim Ed Orgeron, who then goes to LSU, has plenty of success there. You get Clay Helton as an interim and then as the full-time head coach, offensive guy.
Because Steve Sarkisian decided to go have a little too much fun.
Right. A little too much fun. Thankful and grateful that he's gotten his life together.
Yeah.
So Steve Sarkisian. And then you have Dante Williams as the interim head coach there in 2021. Then you get Lincoln Riley. Well, I know USC loves to make the splashy hire. It's not the splashiest thing to promote from within. It's not the splashiest thing to go get a defensive guy. But you just extended this guy. What if former Penn State defensive back and now current defensive coordinator for the USC Trojans, Danton Lynn, was elevated to be the head coach of the USC Trojans after Lincoln Riley is pushed out of Los Angeles? I think Danton Lynn is a very, very competent defensive coordinator, to the point that Penn State tried to just go get him, and USC was like, hold on a second, we'd like to keep him. They extended him. They gave him more money. Is it possible that USC already has the answer when Lincoln Riley flames out in-house? I still think USC is going to want to make the big, splashy, headline-worthy hire. They tend to like offensive guys, like I just stated, but you have a plausible solution in-house right now, And it's clear changing the identity of USC and getting away from the Caleb Williams era, getting away from the big splashy quarterback, that sort of thing. Play good defense and win games out there in Los Angeles. That's all they're going to care about. That's what defensive guys like to do. I think Danton Lynn could be somebody that could elevate them and at the same time get USC back into the top 10.
I'm not going to lie. Danton Lynn has been my favorite hire by any coordinator in the last decade, and I can easily see that being the plan. Remember, okay, just humor me. Remember when Marcus Freeman was promoted internally at Notre Dame?
Yep.
And the buy-in immediately from all the players. That is what I think would happen if Danton Lynn got the job. 100%.
Mm-hmm. I think it's likely. I'm seeing in the chat here, Riley's buyout being like $80 million. Very likely. I don't necessarily see that USC would fire him, but I could see him understanding the writings on the wall, and he goes and takes a coordinator job in the NFL.
Oh, also, what's really interesting, remember, he was not hired by the current athletic director and Jennifer. Why am I blanking on her last name? Crap. Why am I blanking?
I don't know her name.
From Washington, Jennifer, whatever. Not the hire. So there is no loyalty to hold on to her the way that it was previous regime.
That's my pick.
Tom broke the rules, but I guess we're going to allow it this time because it was a good rule break.
It makes too much sense. That's the reason that's the reason I let it stay.
I'm sorry. I like logic. Yeah.
So, to nobody's surprise, I'll go back to the Big 12 one more time. A lot of the same reasons that I picked Kenny Dillingham. I like Kalanhi Sitake at BYU. Former player. I think the culture is really important. I think you look at his last 5 seasons: 11-1, 10-3, 8-5, 5-7 stinker, and then 11-2 last year. They kind of tailed off before beating Colorado's brains in the bowl game. Big 12 again, wide open. They're always going to have a really veteran roster. I think that's set up for success. And I'll tell you, if they win 10 plus games again this year and make the playoff, or if they win the Big 12 just this year, he's going to be in everybody's top 10, right? I think that's going to be a foregone conclusion next year. And so we're talking about 2028. Can he sustain that? Well, with the Big 12 getting 2 seeds, what does that do for recruiting? What does that do for the portal? They're always going to have, like I said, an older roster just because of the culture there at BYU. You don't have a lot of guys transferring out. I think that Sitake has a chance for some of the same reasons Dilly does too, to really be that guy in the Big 12. And kind of when I look at the programs in the Big 12 and I think like who could really ascend, who could really benefit from what they're going to get. We mentioned in the college football playoff, I didn't mention this then. I think the two team format is maybe not to give the ACC too much credit here, somewhat a bad thing for the ACC because they have 3 teams that, though the ACC is garbage, they have 3 teams and maybe a fourth with SMU that recruit high enough level to make a 12-team playoff. And so where I think that kind of shafts the ACC a little bit, it's great for the Big 12 because they don't even have one team that recruits well enough to consistently make a playoff. So I think that gives some leeway to another Big 12 team that maybe isn't as deserving. And I think BYU is kind of primed to continuously. I mean, you look at Sitake's reign there, right? Other than the 5-7 stinker and some really, really early years, they put a winner out on the field most years under him, and I think they'll continue to do that.
Let me ask you guys, is there one coach that you were shocked none of us named? Because I have one name in mind.
So I have a question on a name, and I don't know if it's the one if we're thinking of the same one or not. We can talk about the one that I mentioned here briefly too. But who are you thinking?
Jeff Brom.
Oh, yeah, I can see that at Louisville.
That was the one name I thought one of us was going to pick.
Yeah. I could have seen Andy Kotelnicki being somebody out there, but I do worry, and I'm a Penn Stater, a grad, and a fan. I do worry his offense is too gimmicky. I think it was kind of proven last year at Penn State that it's like, hey, you have the athletes to do this. You don't need to be running all these gadgets and gimmicks. If you can't just line up and run the football against somebody or run your bread and butter and win, I look at Georgia, the way that they've done that for years under Kirby Smart. I think Andy Kotelnicki is going to be a sexy hire here after 2025. But yeah, I just don't see him necessarily being a guy who elevates somebody because, oh my gosh, I run a double quarterback system and 6 reverses and I send my guard in motion or something like that. It's like, yeah, if you don't have the people to beat people, you're not going to win games. I know that's a really basic thing to say, but I like Jeff Brom as well. I think that's a good one.
All right, here's one that just for the fun of it, I did put this in the notes, so you probably had a little bit of a heads up. If Deion is still at Colorado in 2028, listen, Here's the logic. If he's still there in 2028, I think he's a top 10 coach. And the only reason why is because I think he's gone at the first, I mean, not to get the Colorado fans going crazy in the mentions, but if he's not there, obviously he doesn't qualify for the list, but if he is still there 3-4 years from now, it's because he's found success without Hunter and Shedeur, right? And so at that point, if he's now been at Colorado for 5-6 years, the only way he's at Colorado for 5 or 6 years is because he's a top 15-ish coach in college football. Now, X's and O's, do I think he's there? Recruiting effort, do I think he's there? Probably not. But if you're winning, that's all that these lists are really based on, right? All that they're really judged on. Mario Cristobal, great recruiter, outside of this year, can't win. And so I think that if he's still there, it's because they're winning. And if he puts together 5 seasons at Colorado and he's still there in 28, I think he's going to be on the list. I didn't mention him because I don't think that happens.
I don't think he's there is the main thing.
First of all, he's not a great recruiter. He's really good at working the transfer portal. Like, he's not necessarily going to high schools. And if anything, he's building a coaching staff of more guys that won't go to high schools. Like, you got Marshall Falk, you got Warren Sapp.
I do like his coaching staff, though.
Yeah, it's a great coaching staff on paper, but are you going to see Warren Sapp, like, on the trail going to high school, shaking hands and kissing babies, that sort of thing, kissing other people? But, like, seriously, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The way that if he's put together this staff and it does work, then yes, he's completely changed the way coaching and recruiting works in college football. I agree with your point, but that's a huge if.
Yeah.
The other thing I will say is that
I didn't include him for that reason, but if he's there in 28, I think we'll say he's pretty close to that top 10.
The other thing I will say is that with the fluctuation of what the Big 12 is, I think any name could really be there because Whittingham is not going to be around that much longer. And again, he's, in my opinion, he's not a top 10 coach anymore, but he was forever. And Gundy's not going to be around that much longer anymore. So those are 2 names. The other one that I want to throw out was Lance Leipold at Kansas. My big fear with him is just, I think Kansas is going to plateau as an 8-9 win program, which again, Kansas' standard is great. And he proves that he can win everywhere, but also it's just like, is 8-9 wins good enough to get you in that top 10 range conversation?
Thanks for checking out this video. Like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're looking for more college football stuff, we've got it right here on College Football Addiction. Thanks for tuning in.